On Collins Avenue under the blazing Florida sun, a day that seemed like any other suddenly turned extraordinary. Traffic slowed to a crawl, not because of a collision or a jam, but because of a small wild character, a coyote pup. It stood boldly in the middle of the road, its eyes a mix of desperation and determination, refusing to budge even as cars surrounded it. Officer Nora Winters, accustomed to all kinds of strange situations in her career, sensed something special about this one. As she approached the trembling animal, she saw more than just a lost creature. She felt it was trying to communicate something urgent. Then, when the metal on its leg glinted in the sunlight, her heart raced. A mystery awaited somewhere, and this pup might be the key. Where would it lead her? Why did it wear that look of distress? From a routine shift, Nora was about to embark on an unexpected journey, uncovering secrets no one could have foreseen. Before we dive in, remember to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit the bell for updates on new stories. The brilliant summer sun shone down on Collins Avenue, where one side was lined with houses and trees, and some stretches even cut through forests and past blue seas, casting shimmering reflections on the asphalt that stretched to the horizon. Traffic flowed steadily as usual, with trucks and cars rolling along in their daily rhythm. The people inside those vehicles had no clue something unusual was unfolding on the roadside. Officer Nora Winters adjusted her Stetson hat to shield her eyes from the glare, squinting at the patrol car's screen, displaying notes from dispatch. At 36, with 12 years at the Florida Department of Public Safety, she'd seen her share of situations. But a call about wildlife rarely demanded immediate attention. Except this time. Something about it felt different, sparking an odd sense of curiosity in her. She couldn't ignore the report of a small but fierce animal disrupting traffic. Dispatch, this is Unit 247 en route to handle a wildlife incident on Collins. Mile marker 143, ETA 10 minutes, she said into the radio, pressing the gas to close in on the scene. Copy that, Officer Winters. Be careful. Drivers are reporting more details. They think it's a coyote pup acting real strange, came the steady voice from dispatch. Nora's curiosity deepened. With her experience, she knew wild animals typically steered clear of busy roads, not darted into the thick of traffic. Something was definitely off. Before she even arrived, signs of chaos caught her eye. A cluster of cars had pulled over to the side, drivers stepping out, pointing, and snapping photos with their phones. With quick reflexes, Nora parked her patrol car behind the last stop vehicle, flicking on the warning lights to alert oncoming traffic of the hazard ahead. As she stepped out, the oppressive heat and the sound of Florida's ocean waves hit her like a forceful gust. She adjusted her duty belt and approached a middle-aged man in a faded Dallas Cowboys t-shirt who was motioning for the crowd around him to step back. Good afternoon, sir. I'm Officer Nora Winters. Can you tell me what's going on? The man wiped sweat from his forehead before replying, Ma'am, there's a coyote pup over there. He pointed toward the median strip dividing the road. It's been dragging a shoe into the middle of the street for about 20 minutes now. It runs out, then darts back. Nearly caused an accident when a big truck had to slam on the brakes to avoid it. Cars had to stop to steer clear, drawing a curious crowd and bringing traffic to a standstill. Nora nodded, her sharp eyes quickly scanning the area. Has anyone tried approaching it yet? No, ma'am, it's a wild animal, after all. Plus, he hesitated, it looks real scared, like it's trying to get our attention or something. I've never seen anything this weird. Nora thanked him and cautiously moved toward the median, her hand instinctively resting near her holster. She'd dealt with injured wildlife before, and knew that even a small predator could turn dangerous if cornered. Then she saw it, a coyote pup, probably just a few months old. Its sun-scorched tan fur was matted with roadside dust. It paced back and forth along the edge of the median, sometimes starting to dart out, then flinching back as cars roared by. Nora watched from a distance, intrigued. Its behavior was odd, not like an animal simply lost. It seemed deliberate, almost reckless, as if it were desperate to be noticed. She pulled out her binoculars for a closer look. That's when she spotted it, a small device attached to its hind leg, marked with a blue plastic tag. It looked like it had been tracked or cared for by someone. A jolt of realization hit her. and she hurried back to her patrol car, radioing the Regional Wildlife Control Office with a mix of urgency and anticipation. Less than 15 minutes later, a blue pickup truck bearing the Florida Wildlife Control Center logo pulled up behind her vehicle. Dr. Andrew Mitchell stepped out of the truck. He was a lean man in his 60s with sun-tanned skin and keen eyes, having worked as a wildlife biologist for over 30 years. If anyone could make sense of this, it was him. "Dr. Mitchell," Nora said, extending her hand. "Thanks for getting here so fast." "Just call me Andrew," he said, shaking her hand. "The dispatch team said there was a coyote with a strange tag. It sounded so strange that I had to come right away." Nora gave him a quick rundown as they carefully approached the pup, mindful not to spook it. "It's over there," she said, pointing. "Take a look at that thing on its leg." Andrew raised his binoculars, adjusting the focus. "Well now," he muttered, "this isn't one of our tracking devices. Wild animals usually get collars, not leg tags like this. And that blue plastic marker? It's unusual." The coyote seemed to recognize them, but instead of running away, it stepped closer, stopping about 12 feet away. It made a small, urgent noise, then turned toward the woods beside the road, looking back at them. "It wants us to follow," Andrew said, his voice tinged with surprise. "I know it sounds strange, but in 31 years working with wildlife, I've never seen a coyote act like this," he explained, his eyes still fixed on the blue tag. "That marker, mind if I borrow your binoculars?" "Mine aren't sharp enough." Nora handed him the binoculars. Andrew looked at them closely, reading the number. DW758. His face paled. "Nora, this isn't an animal tag. This is an emergency locator tag, the kind hikers get when they register in Florida parks." "Why would a coyote have a hiker's tag?" Nora asked, astonishment creeping into her voice. "That's the question that stopped Andrew cold," he murmured. "Let me make a call to check." He returned to the car, talked on the phone for about 5 minutes, then returned with a serious expression. "I just contacted the ranger at the state park. They reported a hiker missing since yesterday. David Whitley, 143, who has hiked here many times. He signed up for a 4-day trip and didn't return to the campsite last night." Nora's police instincts kicked in. "So DW stands for him?" "Exactly. DW is David Whitley, and 758 is his campsite registration number. Looks like he's in trouble." They both turned to the pup. It was still letting out those desperate little cries, occasionally stepping back toward the forest and looking at them expectantly. "This is unreal," Nora said. "How does this coyote have a missing person's locator tag?" Andrew grew pensive. "There's one possibility. According to the ranger's records, David Whitley's a wildlife trainer, specializing in wild canines. Coyotes, wolves, predators. He might have been looking after this pup. But if that's true, why is it here and he's not?" The question hung in the air, silencing them both. Then the pup yelped again, more urgently this time, and took a few steps toward the forest, as if pleading for them to follow. Nora took a deep breath and made up her mind. "I'm going to follow it. If this coyote can lead us to David, we can't miss the chance." "I'm coming with you," Andrew nodded immediately. "If David's in the serious trouble, we might need to give him first aid on the spot." He dashed back to the blue pickup truck, grabbing a backpack stuffed with bandages, first aid supplies, water, a flashlight, energy bars, and a basic rescue kit. Nora keyed her radio to contact dispatch, requesting backup. "We've got a missing hiker, possibly connected to this coyote. Dr. Mitchell and I are heading into the woods to search. Please have the nearest units on standby and the rescue team ready to move when we call." "Copy that, Officer Winters. The closest unit will be there in about 30 minutes. Rescue teams waiting for your signal." The voice crackled back through the radio. "All right, we'll proceed carefully and stay in touch via radio." Nora switched off the radio, slung the backpack over her shoulder, and locked eyes with Andrew. They both knew this trek could be risky, but the little coyote seemed to offer a critical glimmer of hope. The pup let out a sharp, insistent yelp, as if urging them on, then bounded along the forest edge. Nora and Andrew followed, staying vigilant, prepared for whatever lay ahead. It seemed to sense their decision, turning and darting toward the tree line, occasionally glancing back to check that they were still following. "I never thought I'd end up following a strange animal into the woods," Nora muttered as they crossed a sloping stretch, signaling passers-by to steer clear of the area. Nature's always got a way of surprising us, Andrew replied. As they entered the woods, the air was cooler in the shade of the oaks. The puppy was about 15 feet ahead, just enough for them to see and follow, but still at a safe distance. Look, Andrew said, he's following a pretty well-defined trail. That's strange. Wild coyotes are usually very careful, hiding or taking detours to avoid people. Nora nodded, looking at the ground. Here, she pointed. Shoe prints, very fresh. Andrew bent down to look. You have good eyes. These are probably only a day old. They're men's hiking boots, size 12 or 13. They continued to follow the coyote, which kept up a steady pace. After about a mile and a half, they came to a clearing. There the bushes were visibly disturbed. Broken branches, trampled grass, a few scattered personal items like water bottles, torn backpack straps, and most worryingly, a few streaks of dried blood on the leaves. Someone ran through here in a hurry, Nora said, instinctively reaching for her gun holster. Or fell, Andrew added, pointing to a steep cliff at the edge of the clearing. The coyote stopped, pacing nervously, making the same short, urgent yelps as before. It approached the edge, then turned to look at them expectantly. Nora and Andrew exchanged glances, then cautiously stepped toward the edge. Below was a ravine about 8 meters deep, with a small stream running at the bottom. Half hidden by a fallen tree, they could see a figure. David, Andrew called out. David Whitley. The figure below stirred slightly, one arm raised as if to wave. He's alive, Nora breathed, turning on her radio. Dispatch, we have a missing hiker. The location is about a mile east of Collins Avenue, milepost 133. Victim is alive but injured. Request immediate medical attention. Understood, Officer Winters. Emergency services are on their way, about 50 minutes, the voice on the radio replied. Nora eyed the cliff. It's not too steep. We can rappel down with rope. I'll go first. Andrew nodded. I've got the med kit with me. They carefully climbed down the cliff, securing a rope to a tree trunk for support. The coyote pup found its own way down, moving lightly and skillfully, guided by its natural instincts. At the bottom of the ravine, they found David Whitley still conscious, though clearly in severe pain. His left leg was trapped under a boulder, his face pale from cold and dehydration. Yet he managed a faint smile as the pup approached him. Luna, he whispered, good job. The dog, named Luna, crept closer, nuzzling her head into David's open hand. While Andrew examined his injuries, Nora handed David some water and updated dispatch over the radio. Severe femur fracture, significant dehydration, Andrew reported quickly. But he's stable for now. David, can you tell us what happened? Nora asked. David took a shaky breath. I was tracking Luna. She's part of a research project, almost ready to be released into the wild after her final check. He paused, wincing in pain. Everything was fine until a loud boom. A section of the cliff suddenly gave way. The heavy rain had weakened the soil. I got buried under a pile of loose dirt and rocks, and my leg got pinned. I couldn't free myself. Luna bolted in a panic. Pretty normal for a wild animal spooked by loud noise. But then the tree and some smaller rocks came down and trapped my leg. He gestured toward the locator device. I couldn't reach my emergency beacon, so I attached the tag to Luna's leg, hoping she'd find someone to help. Nora and Andrew exchanged astonished looks. You trained a coyote to go get help? Nora asked, incredulous. David gave a weak chuckle, then grimaced. Not exactly trained. Luna was found as a tiny pup, already used to humans. I just helped her learn that highways mean people. When this happened, I banked on her heading to the road to find someone. I wasn't sure it'd work, but thank God it did. Pride flickered in his eyes despite the pain. Luna sat close to David, her dusty gray fur pressed against him, her wary gaze shifting between Nora and Andrew. Unbelievable, Andrew said, marveling as he rigged a temporary splint for David. A miracle, a wild animal saving a human. I trusted her, David said simply. The next hour unfolded in a flurry of urgency. The rescue team arrived with medical gear and a specialized stretcher to extract David from the ravine. As they worked to lift the tree and free his leg, Luna stood nearby, alert but not interfering. Nora felt a wave of awe at the bond between David and this coyote. It went beyond anything she'd ever understood about animals. As the team prepared to hoist David up, he called out weakly, "Luna, please, someone take care of her. She's not ready to go back to the wild yet." Andrew patted David's shoulder reassuringly. "I'll look after Luna until you're back on your feet." David's face relaxed slightly as they lifted the stretcher. "Thank you," he whispered. "My truck and gear are still at campsite 758 in the park." "We'll handle it all," Andrew nodded. As David was pulled up from the ravine, Luna let out an anxious whine, starting to follow. Acting on instinct, Nora crouched down to the coyote's level, her voice soft. "It's okay, little one. He'll be fine. You did an amazing job, Luna. Truly incredible." Luna gazed at her with sharp, knowing eyes, seeming to grasp more than most would expect from a wild creature. The next day, the story of David Whitley and Luna hit local papers everywhere. Headlines like, "Man saved by coyote pup," spread like wildfire. National outlets picked it up too, praising the extraordinary connection between humans and wildlife. 3 weeks later, Nora drove to the Brown Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, where David worked, to visit him. She couldn't forget the story, and when her supervisor asked her to participate in a community engagement program, Nora volunteered. David wheeled himself closer to the fence. "We're starting a new program called Luna, for animals that, for various reasons, straddle the line between wild and tame. They'll help us learn more about their species and support conservation education." "And Luna's the first ambassador?" Nora guessed. "Exactly," David nodded. "She's got the instincts of a coyote, but formed a unique bond with humans. After that incredible rescue story, everyone's fallen for her." They watched Luna tackle a series of puzzles in her enclosure, challenges that showcased her intelligence and agility, impressing even Nora, who wasn't an animal expert. "That rescue wasn't just luck, was it?" Nora asked. "Did you train her beforehand?" "Not exactly what people think," David shook his head. "Jackals are not like domestic dogs, so they can't be trained. I just went with her instincts and made a few hints. The main road is where there are people who can help in times of trouble, and the tracker is about me." He chuckled a little ruefully. "Honestly, I wasn't sure it would work. It was just a gamble." "And yet she saved you," Nora said. "And changed her life," David added softly. News of the rescue spread quickly, bringing in enough donations to keep the Luna program running for at least 3 years. "We're building a separate area where visitors can learn about Florida wildlife through residents like Luna, animals who can't be fully returned to the wild." "Speaking of attention," Andrew chimed in, "the governor's office called this morning. They want to honor both of you with a special award at next month's State Conservation Gala." David looked a bit sheepish. "I told them Luna's the real star, not me." "But they said Florida doesn't have a protocol for giving medals to coyotes," Andrew laughed heartily. "Still, they're putting her image on the Wildlife Control Center's truck doors as a tribute." Nora smiled, recalling the tiny but determined coyote standing firm in the middle of Collins Avenue just weeks ago. Who'd have thought that little creature would save a life and shift how people view the bond between humans and wildlife? As if sensing her thoughts, Luna padded over to the fence, letting out a small yelp like a greeting. "Want to feed her?" David offered Nora a long pair of tongs with a piece of meat attached. Nora hesitated briefly but took it. Following David's instructions, she extended the meat through a narrow gap. Luna gently snatched it, showing no aggression, then sat down to eat calmly, her keen eyes still fixed on Nora. "I never imagined I'd get this close to a coyote," Nora admitted. "She shows us wild isn't so simple," David said. "There's a wide spectrum between wild and tame. Luna helps us see that boundary's thinner than we think." 3 months later, Nora blended into the crowd at the grand opening of the Florida Wildlife Ambassador Center. Her superiors had sent her as the official representative. But even without the assignment, she'd have come. She needed to see how far Luna had come. The center was striking, with habitats mimicking the natural world, spacious enough for the animals yet designed for visitors to observe easily. Informational signs explained why each creature was there: injuries, too much human contact, or in Luna's case, an exceptional intelligence that made her a unique bridge between nature and humanity. Luna's enclosure sat at the heart of the facility, a wide area with rocks, trees, and a small stream, mirroring her natural environment while supporting research and educational programs. David, now walking without a wheelchair, led the ribbon-cutting ceremony. He shared Luna's story with the press and visitors, then mentioned Nora and invited her to join him on stage. Officer Winters embodied compassion that day, David told the crowd. She didn't just see Luna as some wild animal. She recognized the intelligence and purpose in her actions, even when they came in a form no one expected. After the ceremony, as the crowd dispersed to explore, David took Nora to a special viewing area for a closer look at Luna. "She's really famous now," Nora teased, watching Luna sprawl regally on a rock outcrop, unfazed by the dozens of visitors outside. "Yeah, but the real win is her becoming an ambassador for her kind," David replied, his voice carrying quiet pride. "Everyone who hears this story wants to support conservation and protect coyote habitats. It's hard to believe, but in just 6 months, one coyote has done more for Florida's wildlife than a decade of traditional campaigning." Nora watched Luna stretch, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd, before locking on to her, as if recognizing an old friend. "Do you ever wonder what Luna's thinking?" Nora asked suddenly. "Every day," David chuckled. "But I've learned to embrace the mystery. Luna reminds me animals aren't mini versions of us. They've got their own differences, their own depth." As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows from the trees, Nora thought back to that call about a strange animal blocking traffic. A moment that ended up tying together so many lives. David's, Luna's, hers, and now thousands of visitors learning about the fragile balance between humans and the wild. "You know," she said, breaking the silence, "in 12 years as a cop, I've never seen anything like this. I hope I don't have to go through it again." David laughed. "Once was memorable enough." They stood quietly watching Luna, the coyote who'd once disrupted Collins Avenue to plead for help, now confidently ruling this space in her own natural way. Her presence was proof of the wondrous bonds possible between humans and animals. As twilight faded and most visitors left, Luna rose slowly and approached the glass where Nora stood. Her golden eyes met Nora's, and that unspoken connection stirred again. A bridge between two worlds, wild and human, where both had something to teach the other. Nora thought to herself that this was the perfect ending to an extraordinary story. And maybe, just maybe, the start of many more wonders to come. Share your feelings about this story in the comment section. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to ring the bell to update new stories.